All right, okay, good evening, everyone. Good, so we'll get started in a while. Okay, I think kind of started it a little bit earlier. Good. So welcome back, everyone, to the new week.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so we'll get started for today's session. Typically, again, what we do over here is at the start of the week on Monday, I'll run through the market, giving you guys an overview of the market itself, where are some of the opportunities, some of the things to take note of. And then, of course, we'll just very quickly end off the session with a Q&A as well, right? So if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it into the chat box. Okay. So this week itself, we do have, of course, the NFP, right? First Friday of the month. On top of the NFP, we also have the Canadian labor market data coming in same time, same day. So obviously, for those of you interested into news trading, this is definitely one of the very suitable news that you can look for trades. So this of course comes from the Canadian side as well as the dollar side. Okay, so both of this, any pair that has the Canadian and dollar, you can start to look up for it on Friday. Okay, Thursday we do have ECB coming in, and then of course on Wednesday we have the Canadian rate statement. So this week itself is not short of events, right? Of course, Monday is relative quiet, Tuesday nothing much. But Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, every other day we do have that event. This is again important because if you're trading related currencies, you want to obviously be aware of the potential volatility. Okay, and if you're into news trading, then those are definitely opportunities to keep an eye on. Okay, so that's on the news side of things. Then now let's jump into the charts over here to walk you through some of the direction to focus for the week. And of course, these are not meant to be taken directly. These are not meant to be just signals where you execute your trade immediately. Sharing with you over here is solely based on the directional bias. Okay, which are some of the directions that I'm personally more inclined to be focusing on. You still need to have your setups to get involved in those trades. Okay. So I start off with the dollar index. DXY over here, right now I'm holding on to a bullish bias. Okay, the pattern structure is very, very straightforward, right? We have this market coming down. Price actually broke off this inner trend line, and we're kind of seeing a little bit of a corrective structure development. Okay, so for me, I'm definitely looking more on the downside as long as price continues to develop correctively. It may, in the short term, come up a little bit higher, maybe retest that 618 retracement. But to me, as long as it's corrective in nature, we're still looking for that downside with a potential target at 102.80, right? So that's my take on the dollar. And of course, we have NFP on Friday, so potentially that can be a catalyst to shift the dollar to the downside as well. Okay. So with dollar heading potentially lower, then of course euro dollar here we are looking at bullish bars. Okay, so pretty similar over here. We kind of have an inner trend line. The market may come down a little bit lower first before that move up, but again, the idea is if this is corrective in nature, we're definitely more interested in the outside. Okay, so I'm expecting one more push to complete the three-wave structure. 1, 2, 3. Right, so the target is going to be somewhere around 1.0970. Okay, so this is again an opportunity to look out for. We have clear direction, so the next thing to do is just simply look out for a setup to get involved in the buy. Okay, anything that has a clear directional bias, I think the next step is just simply to look for the setup to get involved, where to get your entry, where to put your stop, where to put your target, right? That's about it. Now, if today, for example, a pound dollar over here, my directional bias is neutral. Essentially, what this means is that we don't have a clear higher probability direction to focus. I would rather be patient. Okay, now why sometimes we're in neutral state is because the market is not really giving us clarity. There's no high probability direction that I can look out for, right? So if you take a look at pound dollar over here, what we have is initially a 1, 2, 3, but then this coming down is very corrective in nature, right? Because this is so corrective in nature, there's a good chance this may continue to just bounce up one more time, maybe do a little bit of a tiny break, and this can still come back down. Or okay, this can actually start to do a little bit of a crawl here, and then this will start to just move to the downside, right? So there are basically couple of potential possibility of how pattern can play out, and for that reason itself, I'm just gonna be neutral and let the market play out first, right? Give it time so that it continue to develop and tell me exactly what pattern is likely to develop before I jump in. Okay, so things like neutral, we essentially just want to put them aside, let the market play off, and then we'll come back when things are clearer. Okay. Then we have the Aussie dollar. Okay, so Aussie dollar to me is short-term bullish. Okay, the reason for this is I'm expecting a three-wave corrective structure development, right? We have our first push up, we have second push down. The market seems to be respecting the 618 for now. And for that reason, I'm expecting one more pushback towards the 6640 area to complete the WXY. Okay. Obviously, this may or may not play out again. Nothing is 100% in the market. Okay, but you need to then assess, right? Now we have this potential setup. We have a potential structure. Is the trade worth it, right? Do I have all my conditions and criteria fulfilled before I take the trade? Okay, so for me, this is definitely one of the trade I'm interested in. To the upside, potential target 6640 as I mentioned. Okay, so Aussie dollar over here. Definitely pay attention to that, right? Then we have the dollar CAD. Dollar Canadian over here, I'm actually neutral at this moment because there are a couple again of possibility of how this may eventually play out. I'm not too keen in buying it from where we are at the moment, right? The market has kind of put in quite a bit of an upside. Okay, so there's a good possibility we may start to see a deeper retracement, even potentially a reversal to the downside. But we don't have the pattern clarity at this moment, right? From a bigger scheme of things, we have this as a crawl potentially. But I still want to see that impulsive drop, corrective development, then only we start to commit to the downside bias. Okay, so this one will probably need to take some time, and of course Friday, we have both the Canadian and the dollar news. So this would naturally be a very, very interesting pair that you can keep a lookout, right? And maybe after Friday, that's where we get the clarity moving into next week for potential trades. Okay. Then we have dollar yen. Dollar yen here, I'm basically neutral as well because the upside potential to me is not that attractive. There's a good possibility the market would just hit a little bit higher, break out of this high, targeting around 151.20. But to me, that's not a trade worth taking, right? So I'm just going to be neutral, wait for this to play out. And then I'll start to focus and see if we can get a sell side bias. Okay, so this would again take time. So this is going to be neutral. Then we have gold. Gold made an impulsive move to the upside last week. So definitely bullish. And this actually broke out of this channel as well, right? Price broke out of this channel. So naturally it's bullish, right? And if you kind of look at the longer term perspective, it's definitely bullish. There's no reason to be selling gold. Okay, we have this as a move up. Potentially this has completed that structure over here. This is likely going higher. Just one thing to be careful, of course, this can turn into a bigger corrective structure for one more push down before the next move. Possible. Okay, so that's where I mentioned you have a directional bias, but you still need to have a setup to get involved in the trade. Okay, so to me at this moment, we don't have a setup to buy gold. Okay, we only have a clear momentum push with a clear direction to be focusing. The confirmation comes if the market gives us a corrective pullback. Okay, this will give us one more push up, right? If the market from here starts to do into a crawl development, then you want to be very, very careful on any buy. That would likely mean that we are likely looking for more of a downside instead of the up. Okay. Yeah, so this is on gold. Okay, right now, based on what we have, I'm bullish, but of course, really depends on the next phase, how the market's going to develop from here on. Okay, then we have crude oil. Crude oil is quite clear. Definitely interested to sell this. More on the bearish side of things. I think the structure perspective is quite clear. The market is respecting the channel. We're getting quite close to the top of the channel. Recent times, market seems to be lacking momentum as well. Okay, so overall, I'm actually more interested in the downside, right? So the bias here is definitely bearish. But at the moment, again, we don't get clarity from the market, right? We don't get a confirmation. Okay, so I want to see some kind of an impulsive break to the downside, right? Maybe with some inner trend line, wait for the correction, then that would naturally be a sell trade to the downside. Okay, so some things that I kind of covering over here is require maybe one or more, maybe 2 more days, right? 1 to 2 more days, for the price to move before we have that conviction. Okay, so that's where, again, based on what we have today, I'm sharing with you. But do take note that things can shift, things can change as the market continues to develop. Okay, so that's on crude oil. Then we have S&P. I think equities market quite straightforward. It's definitely upside. Okay, you just wait for the setup to get involved in the buy trade, right? I think US market just focus on the buy side of things, right? Let me just extend this. The rest of it, pound yen here in terms of crosses, not really clear right now. Ideally, of course, we want to see a little bit of a corrective, but that seems a bit more of a V shape, so we'll just leave it for now. Probably the directional bias needs to be updated to a little bit more of a neutral side because we don't really get a correction. Aussie yen here, I'm expecting a 3-wave development. Okay, something like this, right? So the idea is we have an impulsive drop. If we can get a 1, 2, 3, then that will be a nice little sell, right? To complete the bigger structure for 1, 2, 3. So yeah, Aussie yen here, I'm interested in the downside bias. If you can get a corrective move back towards 98.20 area, that will give us a nice little sell opportunity with a target at 96.80. Okay, so Aussie yen is another one. Of course, short term, if this can't pull back correctively, you can even look for a short term buy. Okay, so yeah, there are many opportunities available even in the smaller time frame. While we're looking at the H4, you know, some opportunities may come out on the lower time frame on H1. Okay, so I'm giving you again, you know, some of the pairs that I'm personally looking out for. For example, like Aussie dollar, Aussie yen. These are the 2 pairs I'm looking into. Putting a bit more focus on them. Then of course there are other pairs that you just need to give it some time. Okay, pound Australia over here is also bearish, but again, I don't really like how the market is developing. Last week, right, we were anticipating an impulsive drop, but this is doing very corrective. So while the bias is still there, my personal suggestion is, you know, you may have better opportunities somewhere else, then, you know, move on, right? You don't want to focus on this. Okay, Euro Canadian, more or less the same as well, right? Initially we were looking at this impulsive move, and then we want this correctively so we can get a sell. Today's price action seems to be quite impulsive, so I don't really like that development. Yeah, so this one probably nothing much as well. Okay, Bitcoin is still heading higher, but of course, if you don't have any buy at the moment, you probably don't want to jump in at a high. This move is pretty much quite extended. At some point in time, we'll definitely see some kind of a pullback, right? So if you want to buy into Bitcoin, wait for the pullback. Okay, wait for the pullback. But of course, Bitcoin over here, I have this line, vertical line, that's marking the 1st of April. So BTC in this year, we do have a halving somewhere around April and May as well. So that's just again to annotate. And as we are getting close towards that, naturally we want to be very careful in terms of the potential volatility. But to me, historically, when Bitcoin have an halving, prices tends to shoot up, right? So from a directional bias point of view, I'm actually inclined more towards bullishness. Okay, yeah, so those are some of the things to look out for. As of today, there isn't a lot of opportunity, as I mentioned, but you know, from week to week, that's how the market develops, right? We don't want to force things in. We just want to trade what the market is showing us, right? If we have a lot of opportunities, we'll filter out and pick up the high quality ones. If we don't really have a lot, then so be it, right? We'll remain disciplined, we'll remain patient, and wait for those setups to come to me. Okay, yeah, so those are the few things that I have for today. Let's see some of the questions that you guys may have. Okay, so I see over here Wei asked about the euro pound, right? So euro pound over here, the entire of last week is just basically very slow for this pair. You can see how the market has been developing, right? There's a good odds we're likely gonna see a continuation up. Okay, I think the overall direction on this is still pretty similar. The only thing that you probably want to be a little bit careful is this can actually come back down first. Okay. Yeah, so this whole thing here may develop into something like this. Okay, so if I kind of like edit this a bit, right? It's not going to be surprising if the market actually shift into another pattern. Okay, so this would then turn into a little bit of something like this, right? So that's a possible pattern structure development as well. Okay, so Euro Pound, not a fan of it because price tends to be very slow moving. Okay, yeah, but this is the take on Euro Pound. Aussie Canadian. Okay, yeah, Aussie Canadian is very much upside. I think overall structure did not really change much, right? I think last week we kind of have someone asking this as well. So I'm still looking at upside. I think in terms of this pair here, the direction is still pretty clear. Okay, it's still gonna be bullish bias. Okay, so that's the take as of now, right? So of course, if you can't include in the channeling technique, I think it's a little bit too early to put in channeling technique, right? But of course, the whole development as of now, this looks corrective, so we're still looking at bullish bias to the upside. Okay, yeah. So Aussie Cat, nothing much has shifted, still basically bullish. Chia asks, please share on the UK Dow Jones and Tesla. Okay, so for FTSE over here, okay, this seems to be taking a bit of time in the development. But I would say this move here seems corrective overall. We may get a bit of a bit more downside, but overall we are still looking at potential upside, right? Okay, so we may get something like that. This is another projection over here, pretty much around that zone, right? So this is the analysis that I will be holding on to based on what we have right now. Okay, so yep, short term this may actually pull back a little bit more towards the area at 7535 area. Okay, so of course if you can get that pullback to the downside, then that would present a pretty decent buy trade as well, right? So kind of put in quite a bit of trend line over here to give you that visual perspective. Okay, so FTSE, I think short term we may get a little bit more downside opportunity, but once it tagged the bottom of the channel around 75.35 zone, right, that's where you want to look for upside potential, and then the target will be here, right, 7760 to 7820. Okay, so this is on the UK side of things. Let's take a look at Dow Jones. Yeah, Dow Jones I think is very much gonna be similar to like S&P and the NASDAQ. I think we are bullish, right? That's for sure. Any corrective structure pullback would naturally be a buy trade opportunity, right? Yeah, so this is what I'll be looking at for NASDAQ, for Dow Jones, sorry. Okay. So short term again, this may kind of pull back a little bit towards 38570 area, and then after that you may want to look out for buy trade opportunity to the upside. Okay, so this is currently developing as a three-wave move up, three-wave move down, and then potentially another three-wave move up. Okay. Then next is Tesla. Okay. Okay, so let me look at this overall structure here. we may see a bigger three-way structure development as well. Yeah. Okay, now why am I projecting the downside is really because this little move here doesn't look impulsive, right? So my expectation is this is impulse. If this is going to continue be corrective, then we can potentially get one more downside. And that will complete the bigger structure, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that will give you the yellow cycle WXY. And then maybe after that upside. Okay. Yeah, so that's my take for now. Let me add in a little bit of a drawing to give you that visual reference and guide. Okay. So it may or may not, really come towards that very nice 100%, right? Because again, FIPS are just as a reference point. You can also look at the yellow channel for your guidance as well. So of course, this here opens up the possibility of maybe, a little bit more upside than the move down. Okay. And then that would be your internal WXY in white. Okay, so that's one way to look out for it. If you're gonna pull FIPS from swing high to swing low, okay, yeah, so that 50 and 618 would obviously be quite a crucial FIP area, right? Yeah, so that's my take on Tesla. Okay, this may continue to develop correctively. Of course, if it's gonna be developing correctively towards the zone, then that would be opening up a sell opportunity. Yeah, if this doesn't go corrective, this just goes up like that, then obviously you don't want to be selling. Okay, yeah, so that's the take on Tesla. EuroCAD, is it completing the 5 wave? For me, this my view on EuroCAD, right? It may have completed the 5 wave here already, but we need to see, right? We need to see if this high is going to be respected or not, because this comes out a little bit impulsive in nature. So my take is things are not the clearest at the moment for Euro Canadian. Okay, things are not, because this can also start to deal into something like that, right? I mean, this can go into a regular flat 1, 2, 3, right? So again, just want to stress, Euro Canadian right now is not the clearest of all. Okay, so probably not the best pair to be focusing on. Okay. Now I do have a crypto potential pair I'm looking at, but I'm not very convicted to this. Not very convinced on potentially taking this trade as well. We may have this corrective structure developing here. But what I don't like about it is on the higher time frame, we kind of have some obvious extension already without a meaningful pullback, right? We don't have this meaningful pullback, okay? So I'm just very careful on the buy at the top here, because we may actually see potentially maybe wave 5 is done, and then we may start to see a deeper pullback, right? Okay, so for that reason itself, I'm not really convinced in the taking the buy trade. Okay, so just to kind of give you guys a perspective of the steps that I do. Okay, very quickly, let me bring up the framework, right? Okay, so I always reference back to this framework. Do I have a clear direction that I can focus on? Do I have the setup to pull the trade? And then the context, right? So as I mentioned in Solano over here, while we have a pretty clear directional bias in terms of impulse, and then if this does a correction, we have a very obvious directional bias, which is bullish. Okay, we may have a setup, but the context of this trade doesn't give me confidence, right? The context of this trade is again on a high time frame. I don't like where we are at this moment. I don't like how the fact that price has been moving in one direction pretty aggressively without any meaningful pullback like this. And then if I'm going to look to buy here, I'm just not very convinced. Okay, so that's again the framework to guide me, right? So not all trade with a valid setup, I'm going to be taking it, because during the phase of the contextual analysis, I look at some other things, right? I look at, elements of, over here you can see confluence, alignment, risk to reward, and at the end of the day, it's a matter of, is this trade worth taking? Okay, so for me, Solano is not, okay. Yeah, so that's the few things that I have. Okay, I mean, at this moment, I don't really have a lot on my table. Okay, I'm looking at Aussie dollar, Aussie yen. Again, they are Aussie related. I understand that this week we have NFP, so most of the major pairs may be a little bit slower building into Friday. Okay, so you want to have a little bit of a patience, right? For major pairs, because they might consolidate a little bit, then go into NFP, and then that's where the volatility kicks in. Okay. Can you explain liquidity area, order block, and imbalance fair gap? It's really not that complex. If I were to, okay, let me open up a chart. Okay, with gold, I think gold is easy to talk about it. Okay. The whole idea is market imbalance, fair value gap is when we have an impulsive move, right? Huge momentum candle. And then we start to observe that, all right, there is some overlap, right? That means, there's no overlap. Okay, so the previous candle and the after candle doesn't really overlap, right? You can see this example here, right? There's no overlap. So this area is what we call market imbalance. Some traders will give it the name fair value gap, FVG. Okay, and that's the concept of it, right? So you kind of have the principle of when the market moves in a certain direction with high momentum, very strong move, it will often leaves behind fair value gap. It will often leaves behind what we call market imbalance, right? So if today we're in a bullish market environment, right, this is the fair value gap, then where would be the order block? The order block would be the candles that created the fair value gap, right? So obviously this would then be the demand zone. Okay, and this would be your fair value gap. Okay, so it's really not complex, right? But again, you don't want to just trade off this, because as I mentioned, right, the framework here is, do you have a clear direction? Okay, because if you start to look onto your trade, you can always find a lot of fair value gaps, a lot of market imbalances. You'll always find a lot of different order blocks, demand, supply zone, and things like that. You're going to be very confused if you don't have a directional bias. Okay, so you always start off your trade analysis by looking at, do I have a directional bias to focus? If I have, I go into the setup. Do I have a set of conditions? Do I have the criteria for me to take the trade? Do I know where am I going to get in, where I'm going to get out, if I'm wrong, if I'm right? So basically your strategy component. And then your context, right? Is this trade worth taking? Do I have conviction to this trade? Am I confident about it? Okay, so we are looking at our other factors as well. To me, the bare minimum is your directional bias and your setup. If you don't have either of this, you're not trading, you're gambling. Okay, context is a little bit more advanced, but context is where it brings in the psychology element of trading. Okay, how confident you are, how convicted you are. Do you have a peace of mind when you're taking those trades, right? Are you investing a portion of your mental capital? You allocate your mental capital correctly, so that you only take trades that are worthwhile, so that you can maintain your focus, right? So those are all things about context. Okay, yeah. So I hope it helps. Okay. Yeah. So those are basically the things I'm looking at. Again, we'll see, right? We'll see how the market goes for the week. Yeah. Generally, that's about it for me. Okay, so yep, that's all for today. Very quickly share with you guys. Again, for those of you who are familiar with this, I think you know already. But for those of you who are still fairly new to this platform called Everything Trading, Okay, it's free, so you can basically sign up for free. Just put in your email, your details. You'll be able to create an account. So once you create your account and you can then log in. Okay, just very quickly show you. Inside, I'm running 2 live sessions every week. Okay, one on Wednesday and then one is on Thursday. Let me see. Oh, the interface did change a little bit, right? Sorry about that. Okay, you probably won't be able to see it here for now. Okay, the interface changed a little bit. Pardon it. The last time I logged in, it wasn't like that. But anyway, I want to highlight over here is you can actually join some of the live trading session. Of course, not only me, right? As I mentioned, I run it on Wednesday evening for Chinese and Thursday evening for English, 9 p.m. Okay, which is GMT plus 8, right? So again, depending on which time zone you're in, you probably need to do that adjustment. Okay. Yeah, but for those of you who are interested, right, you can create your account, log in, and then again, there are multiple content available on the left hand side on this website over here. Feel free to go and explore, right? And of course, if you're interested in any of these live trading sessions, just click on the register and you can register accordingly. Okay. So yes, that's all for me for today's session over here. Right, all the best to your trading for the week, and we'll see you guys in the next session itself. Okay, so that's all for me. All the best to you guys. Bye bye.